So July is Disability Pride Month. You know how June is LGBT Pride Month? July is Pride Month for people with disabilities. All types of disabilities, physical, mental, emotional, neurological. So anyway, let me tell you a little story about how I ended up raising a kid with a disability and how that kind of turned into a total path for me. So to start off the story, I'm going to have to back up a little bit, all the way to 2006. I think it was 2006. We decided, my ex-husband and me, to put our 3-year-old into preschool. Now, I had not gotten a chance to go to preschool. My parents had no money, so we didn't even get a chance to go to daycare, really. So I was excited, and I wanted to put my kid into the best preschool I possibly could. So I chose Montessori school. Now, if you know anything about Montessori school, they are hardcore. Like, you don't play, you do your work. That's what they call it, doing your work. They're hard ass. And my kid, I figured he was smart because, he had been, he had all his milestones, like either on time or a little bit, early, and, was fully talking and very creative and just, very active, busy little kid. So I thought, oh, he'll be perfect in Montessori school. He's going to learn so much. Toward the end of the school year, I got pulled aside by the teacher, who told me that my beautiful little angel was constantly in trouble at school because during circle time, he was laughing and peeling the masking tape off the floor and disrupting everyone else. Now, when I tell you that I was devastated at the thought that something was wrong here, I clearly remember sitting in the cab of my mom's truck sobbing because this dream of having a kid going to this, highly sought after school was just, it was crushing. So they asked him not to come back for the following year. So we put him back in daycare as he had been as a baby for about another year or so until it was time to go to kindergarten. Okay, kindergarten rolls around and I decide, hey, my kid is really smart. Is already showing, interest in science and, things like that and mechanical stuff. And so we found a California distinguished school to send him to. And he lasted 1 week at that school. 1 week. I'll tell you what happened. It sounds kind of crazy. And I've told this story many times to people, and they always are a little bit at a loss as to how to respond, but I'll tell it anyway. My ex-husband's mom had died in the early 90s, and then I did not meet him until the late 90s, so I never actually met my ex's mom, but our kid, went to school for the first week of kindergarten, and then Labor Day weekend happened. And over the long weekend, I had this very vivid dream. This lady showed up in my dream, and she looked like my husband, but female and older, gray hair. I remember clearly she had short gray hair. She was wearing one of those blouses from the early 80s, with the pussy bow and, the movie Tootsie. And she was telling me that I should never worry about, his name is Cole, I should never worry about Cole, that whatever happened, he was going to be totally okay, that she was always watching over him. And somehow, in the dream, I just knew that was Ginger, even though she and I had never met. And I told my husband the next morning about the dream, and I said, I think I talked to your mom last night. This is going to sound crazy, but she told me not to be worried about Cole. He didn't believe me. He thought that was crazy. He's like, it was just a dream. It didn't really mean anything. And then I think it was a couple days later, it was the day after Labor Day. Our kid goes to kindergarten as normal. And about halfway through the school day, I get a call from a very angry school principal telling me that I have to, and they always do this to moms and it pisses me off. Okay, my ex-husband was a high school teacher and he got off work at 3 p.m. I worked full time for our county and I didn't get off work until like 5 at the earliest. And they always called me and told me that I had to leave my job and drive all the way out to deal with the situation. And in their minds, there had been a situation whereby my kid, and it's funny in retrospect, she was so pissed off about this too. He was laying on the floor, kicking filing cabinets and laughing about it and thinking that it was hilarious. So the teacher, I'll never forget, she had this tall beehive hairstyle. We called her Mrs. Beehive. She was like ready to go to war with me over my kid being misbehaved. And she said, well, the one good thing I can say is that you pack a nutritious lunch for him every day. And yeah, I was one of those like West Sonoma County moms. I would pack like a bento box with, hummus and carrots and things like that. And I just, again, I was at a complete loss. I began my launch, not launch, but that incident was the turning point for me. I began writing letters to the school district. I pulled him out of school immediately. I began looking for a different school to send him to. And I said in the letter, I don't know for fact, but I think my son might have ADHD, because that seemed like the most likely thing that was going on. I mean, in addition to thinking that things were funny inappropriately, he was also literally running in circles around classrooms. I took him to the regional center to be evaluated for autism, and he literally ran in circles around the room, and he was hopping into the windowsill and talking like super fast and just, constantly like, and you would never know it to talk to him these days that he was that hyperactive. But that started us on the whole journey into special ed. He was evaluated by his pediatrician, who said, well, he's definitely hyperactive. Said just like that, he's definitely hyperactive. And he was put into a program called TOTS, which is something that Kaiser Permanente offered at that time. I don't know if they still do, for young kids who were having behavioral issues, where they would observe the kids. The parents had to be, the parent had to be there. I had to take unpaid time off of work because, of course, always the mom, never the dad. And you'd watch and you observe. And what I noticed with my son was very friendly, would walk up to other kids. How are you? Let's play. He'd offer them a toy. One kid was sobbing because he missed his mom and he had separation anxiety. My kid said, and this is all pretend play, he goes, oh, I'm so sorry, you're so sad. Here, have a cookie, that kind of thing. And you could see he was just like the Tasmanian devil, had nothing on my kid when he was young. So we got him into the special ed classroom at the local public school. That wasn't quite a fit right off the bat because he was surrounded by kids that had a different type of disability than he had, and the teachers were kind of overwhelmed with him. But he eventually, and I see I'm going to have to wrap this up pretty quickly, that was one of 6 different schools by 4th grade. It took that long to find the correct school to send him to, but that was kind of where it all began. There was medication that was involved for a short period of time. There were a number of different therapists and a whole, they say it takes a village. There was a school district advocate, and my mom, and just so many people involved in making this all happen and all go the way that it eventually went. So quite a long process. So it turns out I have time to record a part 2. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I think when I left off, we were getting my son Cole. At the time he was in kindergarten, heading into 1st grade. This happened over kindergarten and 1st grade. going into the first special ed classroom at the local public school, and then having to kind of figure out and adjust. And that school district, this was the second school district because he had spent 1 week in one school district, and then I pulled him out and sent him to another one. And I'm very tired, so that's why I'm not articulating very well. But the second school district is where he met his advocate, and it was this guy named Eric, and worked for the Sebastopol School District. And this guy's whole job was to sort of spend time with the students and kind of get to know them, and then he could make recommendations to the school staff on, you know, anything kind of related to the child. He would come to IEP meetings, which if you don't know what an IEP is, it stands for Individualized Education Plan. It basically is like a custom tailored plan for the student to learn. And they go over everything, you know, how you're learning English, how you're doing, you know, homework-wise, how you're doing socially, you know, all those things. And this guy, Eric, would come to the IEP meetings. He would make recommendations. He would advocate. I mean, that was his title. He would advocate for the student to get into a certain classroom, or in our case, into a certain school. So the first school didn't work out. The second school he stayed at until partway through, I think it was first grade, and then moved on to another school, which didn't work out. I think that was the school that actually went under. There was a school that lost their funding, and like at the end of the school year, it was like, okay, we're closing down, bye. There was a school, I mean, I lost track of how many schools. There was a school in second grade that it was a public school, but they had 2 special ed classrooms, and they put Cole in one of the classrooms. And this still pisses me off so much. You hear me talk about being pissed off a lot in these videos. At the end of the school year, he brought home his yearbook, and he and I were flipping through the yearbook looking for the photos of him and his class, and we didn't see them. So I went all the way back, flipped through the book again. Where's the picture? All the way back, flipped through the book again. Where's your class? And I reached out to the school principal and I said, hey, it looks like there's a couple classrooms missing in the yearbook. And she said, oh yeah, that's because those 2 classrooms are under different funding. And, you know, I mean, I put together the yearbook by myself. I, you know, did all the, and she's telling me like she had gone to Kinko's and gotten all the color photocopies and stapled, you know, and everything. And she said, well, but at least you got a free yearbook. What? Like, what? So basically they excluded the kids from the fucking yearbook. I have a friend from high school who works for KQED, which is our PBS affiliate. God, I can't talk. But at the time he was working for a local magazine / paper. And I said something on social media, and he reached out. And to this day, if you Google my name or Cole's name, you will find the article that he wrote about the whole situation, about the students missing from the school yearbook. I raised such a stink about that. That school eventually went under, and I was not too sad about it, quite honestly. He had a horrible time with that particular teacher. For whatever reason, she and him butted heads, and that lasted for about a year. There was another school where it was really intended for kids with behavioral issues versus learning disabilities. So there were kids there that had probation officers, like that kind of thing. It was definitely not a strong fit. He got bullied there quite a bit throughout the school year, and we were kind of starting to lose hope a little bit, because this is like 3rd grade heading into 4th by this time. And then Cole's advocate, Eric, noticed what was going on. This kid's getting bullied. He's getting beat up. The kids they had a behavioral system where if you were considered on good behavior, you'd be blue. It was like this chart, all the way down to red, meaning you were bad and you lost privileges. And these kids were bullying Cole and getting him to act out so that he would end up on red quite a bit. Just not a good situation. So the advocate noticed what was going on, and he made a case for a non-public school here in Sonoma County that is known for taking students with neurodivergent disabilities. And we had actually kind of talked to, or I had talked to the previous principal of the school a couple of years prior, and I said, hey, I'd like to see about getting my kid enrolled there. They said, well, the thing about that is we're very particular, he has to have this diagnosis and that diagnosis. And so Cole had been diagnosed, in addition to ADHD, with something called PDD-NOS, pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified, which did not at that time fall under the umbrella that this school was looking for enrollment. And I remember when, Eric Dick had told me, let's try to get him into ANOVA. I had said, well, I already tried. And so I didn't think he would be able to do it. And for whatever reason, this time around, it worked. 4th grade, this was so perfect. At the time, the school, I was now working for a credit union. The school was actually in the same building as my company. So it was perfect. I could just walk down the hallway and have lunch with him, or I could pick him up, or, whatever. I would be sitting on the back patio with other employees and I could hear the kids playing just over the wall. It was fantastic. But what the best part about the whole school was, it was, the school started in these people's garage, basically in the early 90s, and just really evidence-based, child-focused. They have a lot of kids that they're considered twice exceptional, meaning both they have a disability like learning disability or ADHD or autism, but also academically gifted. Like one of Cole's best friends from high school got into MIT right out the gate. So this school really they took individualized education to heart, and he thrived there from 4th grade all the way through the end of high school. In addition to the school staff, his advocate, all the teachers' aides and all that, he had 4 different therapists. Now, I don't know exactly what all they talked about. I know at least one of them was an occupational therapist, or OT for short. He had this stuffed toy cat that he named OT. And he would get on the bus in the morning. You get free bus service when you're in special ed, at least where I live anyway. And he'd say, OT, OT, OT. And one morning, all the kids on the bus were going, OT, OT, OT. So it was very sweet. And it was good to see him make friends and thrive academically. He would bring stuffed toys on the bus when he was younger. There was this turtle. It was a pillow pet. Turtle's name was Buh Turtle, B-U-H, and he introduced the turtle to the bus driver, and I never forget, this one kid in the back goes, did he just say butt turtle? It's hilarious. But anyway, got along great with all the students, the staff, the bus driver even. He had this one super special teacher that was his music teacher and had actually gone to to college with one of the members of the band Imagine Dragons, and actually brought him to school to meet with the kids. Anyway, very long story short, Cole is now a musician as the result of the encouragement of that particular teacher, who, by the way, gave him a personal speech at his high school graduation. Part 3. So we were actually just talking about this the night before last, because it's one of those, it was just kind of a strong memory for both of us, as it turns out. If you've seen the movie Inside Out, the Pixar movie, you know that there's all those spheres that have all the different memories in them. Cole told me the other night that this incident it's considered a core memory for him. He remembers it sort of well, at least parts of the memory. I mentioned previously that there had been medication involved. So this is another one of those things that they didn't tell me until I was actually living it. When you have a child who has been diagnosed with ADHD and you have them going to school, oftentimes the school will insist that your child be medicated so that they can go to school. It's not optional. You can't opt out. You can't say, no, we're going to try this instead, or that, or what, or the other thing. They will insist, and they will make you take unpaid time off work as the mom to sit in the classroom and monitor your child, and they will make you jump through all the hoops before they allow your kid to be in school without you sitting there. That's what happened to me. I lost so much work time sitting in this, at the time it was the first grade classroom, and the teachers were demanding that I put my kid on ADHD meds, which I don't agree with. I don't think they're right for everyone, but they can be helpful for some students. So we tried a couple different ones. I think we tried Ritalin, and we tried, I think it was Concerta was the one that we landed on. We were just like kind of trying to just like get him through the day without, running in circles around the classroom, without shrieking, without, the hyperactive behaviors. And the other thing about ADHD, at least as it manifests in our family, is high creativity, all these ideas, and not a really good place to put them all. But I digress. So when Cole was 9 years old, my father-in-law passed away. Now, he had gotten to know Grandpa Jack a little bit, but the thing about Grandpa Jack was he lived in Oregon, and my husband had gone up to be with his dad in his dad's final moments of life, and then it was time to go drive up there for the memorial service. And again, I'm the mom, I'm working full-time, and by this time I have a boss who watches my every movement, and you have 1 hour for lunch, exactly, not 61 minutes, exactly an hour. So the process to get the ADHD medication prescription refilled involved going up to pediatrics, standing in line, getting the prescription, taking it back downstairs to the pharmacy, standing in line, handing it in, waiting 20 minutes or half an hour or 45 minutes for them to refill it, and then bringing it back and then driving back to the office. And that took an hour and a half. So the days leading up to the funeral, I could not get away from my desk long enough to actually go refill the prescription, and it had to be me that did it. So my 9-year-old ran out of his meds 3 days before his grandfather's funeral, and we hopped in a car. We were too broke to buy airplane tickets at the time. We hopped in the car, all three of us, and we drove to Redmond, Oregon for the memorial service. And to his credit, my son sat in the very front pew through a long service with his, I think it was his dad, his cousins, his mom, everyone getting up and giving a eulogy and everything else that's expected, just sitting there all, dressed up and whatnot. And he didn't act out at all. He was perfect. I was so impressed. He actually made it through the whole thing. Afterward, we go over to my mother-in-law's house to have kind of the wake, they weren't Catholic, but kind of like a wake, with food and, family hanging out and all that. And I'm hanging out in the living room, talking to my mother-in-law, talking to my sister-in-law, talking to my nephews, and Cole is in the backyard. Redmond is the high desert part of Oregon, and I suddenly hear a thump, and I see my kid's face pressed against the back sliding glass door in his hands, and he is covered in blood, like from his face all down the front of like all his clothes. And I was like, oh, this is not good. I opened the door, and this is the part he remembers. I opened the door and I said, oh my God, you look like an extra in a horror movie. What happened? He said, I got a bloody nose. Like, oh, of course. So I don't know my way around town. I go to my nephew Nikolai and I'm like, where can I get him something else to wear? And he goes, oh, let's go to Fred Meyer. And I'm like, I have no idea where Fred Meyer is. Could you drive? So I handed him the car keys. We drive to Fred Meyer. We're going around the store, like looking for a shirt that will fit this kid that's like clean. And the only thing I could find is a Pokemon t-shirt with Pikachu on the front. So perfect. I grab that. We take it back. We get the kid all cleaned up, fresh t-shirt and all that. And then we decided I wasn't included. This is something about this family. I was the only family member not invited to see my father-in-law while he was still alive, and I was the only family member not in this photo. We lined up my ex, his brother, my sister-in-law, nephews, all sitting in chairs on the lawn. And then we have my, again, 9-year-old sitting on his cousin's lap at the end of the row. And everyone sitting in the chair is like somber, like this. My kid is at the very end of the photo going, ah! And I look at that photo now, and that's just like the perfect, for me, that was like a perfect moment in time of, okay, tell me you're a little hyperactive without telling me. But he told me later that being on the concerta made him sad. And based on him saying that, I made the choice to figure out alternative ways of getting him through the school day. And we did try different things like, just like calming techniques and things like that. And also, talking about what the expectations were. You're expected to show up for class, do your homework, turn it in, don't be disruptive, don't start stuff with other kids, just kind of, like it's good. Like this is, you're doing your work. And because, I think partly because he was at the correct school by this time, it actually just kind of like worked out. And again, like he thrived at this school that he ended up at. It was a total godsend for him. He got, I think he got student of the month a couple times. Well, he got student of the month a few times at all the different schools, but they also noticed that he was academically strong in certain areas. Creative writing is always good, has always been good for him. English, math. His dad was a science and math teacher. Science, of course, but especially music. And this kid, he ended up being the DJ at almost all the school dances. There was only one that he didn't DJ at, and that was just kind of like a one-off, but all the other dances, and it was really heartwarming to watch, especially because the school actually burned down during the Tubbs fire, and they had a celebration, not a celebration of the fire, obviously, but they had a school dance planned anyway. They moved operations to a whole different building somewhere else in town, and they changed their school mascot from a dragon to a phoenix. And my son was asked to be the DJ for that school dance. And there's a picture. He's just totally in his element. It's so amazing to watch. And can never thank the staff at that school enough, or his advocate for that matter.